Okay, welcome everybody to the final session of today's Startup Festival. Of course, we do have the networking afterwards, which we hope that you will join us for, but this is the last sort of session in this format. Been lots of interesting discussions so far today, and I think this is a great opportunity to tie things together by bringing it to life with some founder stories. So we're really so privileged to have Olivia Cavan as chair for this session, and we've got a great selection of founders here. I'm happy to say all of whom have been through our BIA Francis Crick Pulse programme quite a long while ago now, but it's wonderful to have them back again doing this panel for us. I'm really excited to hear more about their stories and as I said, how they tie with some of the discussions from earlier in today. I'm going to hand over now to Olivia, who's going to chair the session and introduce.
Hi, it's a pleasure to be chairing this session, especially with such a fabulous group of founders. And I think you can all reveal yourselves now because everyone's hidden at the moment. Everyone here has got a slightly different background story, which I think will be really interesting to tease out. So the way that we're going to run this session today is we're going to start with some intros from our group here. And then we're going to do a very quick poll. So I very much encourage you to use that poll just to find out, what's your aspiration or background in terms of being a founder. And then we'll jump into the discussion. There is a chat function, or actually I should say a question and answer function. So please do post questions here and I will endeavour to multi-screen and drop them into the conversation as best I can. So with no more ado, we're going to start with some intros. So Antoine, let's start with you.
Yes, hi, I'm Antoine. I'm a CEO and co-founder of Microfluidex. We are developing bioprocessing tools for the process development and manufacturing of cell therapies. My background initially was in engineering. My training is in engineering. Then I spent about 5 years in management consulting and started Microfluidex about 3 years ago. I moved to the UK at that time, and to date we are a small team of 5 employees, and we're based in near Stevenage. We're currently developing our product.
Thanks a lot, Antoine. Let's move on to Caroline.
Hi everyone, I'm Caroline Godfrey. I co-founded a company called PepGen. So we have a drug delivery platform for nucleic acids, and we're primarily developing programs in neuromuscular disease, but expect to expand beyond that. So I started in our co-founding lab as a postdoc 10 years ago, and then at the end of my postdoc got involved with spinning out the technology into PepGen. So we got a couple of £1 million from a local Oxford investor called OSI, and primarily we're kind of independently verifying all the data from the academic lab at CROs and doing some de-risking tox experiments, and then took those experiments over 3 years to our Series A raise, which we closed just before Christmas, which was led by RA Capital for $45 million. So now we're in a very different phase of the company. We're expanding a site in Boston. I have a new CEO. I'm moving more into the discovery side of things. Yeah, so it's been quite a journey, but fun to talk to you all today. Thanks.
Noor, great to hear about you and your background.
Yeah, thank you. Hi everyone, I'm Noor Shakir, founder and CEO at Glamorous AI. We are an AI-driven company for drug discovery, so we focus entirely on solving small and sparse and noisy data challenges in the preclinical stage of drug discovery. We have a platform that we call Rosalind AI that is used as a SaaS platform to democratize access to AI across the many therapeutic areas. So we work with partners and collaborators on diseases in neurodegeneration, oncology, Parkinson's, and rare diseases as well. We are based in London. We have a team of about 7 people at the moment, but global team really, given the pandemic. We are about 1.5 years old. Glamorous AI is my second startup. And before that, I was an assistant professor doing AI machine learning for a long time in academia before moving into the startup world about 5 years ago.
Great. And Julian?
Hello, everybody. My name is Julian Martin. I'm one of the founders and now head of business development at a company called PetMedics. We're developing therapeutic antibodies for dogs and for cats. The story of PetMedics starts with our scientific founder, Professor Alan Bradley, who founded a human antibody company called Kymab in 2010 that many of you may have heard of. He had the idea that it could be applied to our pets just as well, and so we advertised a PhD project around that. So when I met him for the very first time as a PhD candidate, he asked me, if this works out, we'll start a company, how do you feel? So it was an unusual situation in that it was a very translationally focused PhD, but thankfully got it far enough ahead that at the end of it, us two and then the third co-founder, Tom Weaver, formerly CEO of Congenica, started the company. The origin story meant that we could sort of incubate the science in Alan's lab for about a year or so. During that which time we raised our Series A, which was £8 million. And we've been going for 2 years and have about 38 employees based just outside of Cambridge.
Brilliant, thank you. Now, before we jump into a discussion, it would just be good to understand folk on the call and what your aspirations about and situation, I should say, is around being a founder. So can we launch the poll just to have a look at who we've got? So you've got 20 seconds, fastest fingers first, go ahead now. Already a fan. So actually it's quite a good mix, and I'm intrigued that not many have been a founder. I always thought that was a bit of a tricky question, but essentially that what means is have you been a founder and then moved on out of the company, which I think is quite an interesting question. But essentially, yeah, we've got a mix of thinking about becoming a founder, a mix of already a founder, and a mix of just curious. Great. So we'll make sure we tailor a bit our discussion to meet everyone's interests. So the first question I have for this group is what made how did you make the jump? Why did you decide, right, I'm going to go and do this? Nor you've done it twice now, so that's kind of twice to you, because you jumped and you failed and you jumped again, which is even better than just jumping. So on that, let's start with you, Nora. I'd just love to hear a little bit about your mind as you went through those 2 jumps.
Right. So it wasn't really planned that much, I would say. So I was in academia for a long time, for about 12 years, and I was very actually happy doing research and having the freedom to do my own research, and quite lucky to have got about £500,000 of funding from the Danish government when I was in Denmark doing my postdoc, to get to be a professor and then do really whatever I want with the money. So I was really enjoying the ride, but unfortunately by the time I think about 6 months after I got my assistant professorship, my mother passed away for lung cancer, and that really changed everything for me in terms of how I'm thinking about my future career and the impact. And we usually, as researchers, we measure our impact by citations and publications and all of that, and it was going very, very well for me up until the point where I realized that the percentage of my research that is usually translated into real world impact in a bigger way is very small. And I thought that a startup basically provides that kind of medium for me to move faster and to translate more and to kind of be closer to the real world and to people. And obviously, because of my personal story, I decided to focus on drug discovery specifically, because I believe that my experience and AI is a very kind of active topic, and a lot of it can actually translate into efficiencies in drug discovery after looking at the numbers and to the attrition rate, the amount of money that we spend on drug discovery, and so on and so forth. So started my first company called GTN and the kind of quantum machine learning, basically applying quantum machine learning to drug discovery, and run the company for about 2.5 years. And basically within that journey, obviously I learned a lot because it was my first kind of moving out of academia into the startup world. But I also understood a lot more about the market and the needs and the gaps and so on and so forth. And realized that probably kind of short-term innovation that can really translate into real-world impact is what I'm really interested in. So basically left the company to my co-founder, who kind of moved on with the quantum bit, which I felt is a bit probably far ahead, while I moved on to starting Glamorous AI to focus on machine learning applications to solve immediate challenges in drug discovery. And that's basically what I've been doing for almost the past year and a half now.
Great. So you didn't even fail. You were kind of, successful first and then moved on to successful second. I mean, that's even better. So I apologize. That was
no worries. I think fail. I mean, in startup world, I don't think anyone can really fail. Everyone learns and learns a lot from just trying. So it's all about experience and the experience that we accumulate in our journey, I think. And as long as we feel like we're productive and we feel like we're contributing, I wouldn't say any experience would be a failure anyhow.
Great. So let's move on to the other two who've had kind of academically, I guess, incepted ideas. So let's start with Julian. Do you want to tell us a little bit about jumping into this full time from your academic background?
Absolutely. So it was an interesting transition in a number of ways. I am literally the age of my co-founder's kids. So there is an asymmetry there, which can bring some challenges, but also, at least from my side, is an excellent learning opportunity. And I hope that I also bring, a different view and something like that. Plus, I love science. I love being a scientist. Bench work, not so much for me. So hence my transition more onto the suit and tie wearing side of things and the corporate strategy. So that was also a shift, but one I've greatly enjoyed, because I feel that now I can enter into these, commercial discussions with a good basis in the science, but also being able to apply it, more commercially focused. It's been an interesting learning experience, but one I would very much recommend to anybody considering it.
Great. And Caroline, any nerves? Was there anything that you thought, actually, maybe I won't do this, I'll go and get a regular job and I will, this is a bit too risky for me? Did anything like that happen to you?
So I had no intention of getting into the, in terms of what Noor was talking about with impact, I also was a bit frustrated that we were doing endless experiments and we were kind of progressing drug development, but there's a limit to what you can do in academia. So I was really interested in getting the story out, getting money in from investors and spinning the technology out into the company. But I sort of assumed that was where my story with the whole journey would end. And I was quite resistant to going into the company. I had kind of plans to go and work in a disease charity and or a research council, which looking back wouldn't have been a good fit for me, but that I kind of already decided that was going to be my career path out of academia. But then I just sort of cared more and more about it, and it took a year to spin the company out, get more data, do loads of due diligence, and I just sort of grew that into my main job. And then they were like, you should come into the company, and I figured that in an impact perspective that would be a good fit, and then it kind of snowballed from there. So yeah, it wasn't my intention, and I'm not a classic founder, and the technology wasn't my idea. There was two academic groups, one in Oxford and one in Cambridge, who had 10 years of experience developing this platform, and I was one of very many postdocs doing it. It just happened that I had joined at the right time and got to the point where it was the right time to spin it out, so I kind of took advantage of that, I suppose. So yes, different journey.
A bit of different, but so I'm fascinated here by Antoine, because I think you took almost the biggest risk of everyone, because you jumped into this from consulting background, pretty stable, and went from that to essentially, I mean, I can imagine maybe no income, hoping to get this panned out. So just tell us, I mean, how did that come about, and what was going through your mind as you were, what has been going through your mind as a part of a prolonged process?
So I think at the beginning it stemmed from, the fact that realizing that corporate career, I wasn't going to be happy in a corporate career, having done so much consulting in corporations, just seeing how corporations move, the pace they move, the way they're organized, realizing that wasn't going to be for me. I also really wanted to, do something where I could make a difference and also be a bit more self-directed. So have this independence and this freedom of choice around, how I want to organize myself and the team and the company. So, it started from kind of, okay, not that, maybe something else. And I was attracted to entrepreneurship for those reasons, just the impact, the ability to kind of self-direct. I started by, I didn't quit my job, immediately. I had some kind of side projects while I was, on the weekends type things, where I was just doing some market research, just meeting people who had different ideas and concepts, scientists, etc., just through, family, friends, friends of friends, etc. In the end, I was at the point with my consulting career where I had to decide, okay, do I keep going, or, this is right now, if I keep going, I have to go kind of all in, or this is a good time to stop. So what helped me make the jump was a few things. First is, to have found an idea and to have a technical co-founder who could kind of support that aspect of the technology. Having done all the market research, seeing there was a growing field, a very burning need, etc. So kind of on that front, that was one of the things that was important to me. Second thing was that from a financial perspective, because I think it's important to also speak about that. So left my job, so didn't have any income at the beginning. I had girlfriend, now my wife, who kept working and who has a good job. So I was able to, there was that stability. I ended up creating a small side business, coaching people who wanted to interview for management consulting, just on the side. So that gave me the flexibility, but also the income to kind of sustain, the coming into the UK, building the network, fundraising, which took me almost 3 years. It was a long journey, but I was very convinced about the idea, about the market. I really liked my co-founder. I had a lot of trust in him as well, and then I had kind of the financial stability, or at least some form of stability to be able to keep going. So I think those three elements together made me want to continue.
I mean, Antoine, to me, that sounds like a mental roller coaster. For 3 years, not having funding and trying to manage everyone's expectations and building a team and proving out the technology. Just looking to the rest of the group, I mean, tell me about, through your process of founding these companies, any mental challenges that you've come across. And as we talk through this, I just request the rest of the, people that are listening, please do send in your questions. Because we've got an excellent panel here who can answer any of them. So open the floor to Noor, Joylin and Caroline. Great to get your thoughts. Go ahead, Noor.
Yeah, I think just kind of reflecting on when I started 5 years ago, jumping from academia to the startup, one of the main challenges for me becoming also a CEO is really translating scientific ideas and scientific language into something that other people who are not really necessarily kind of domain experts in my area would really understand, and also understand the language that they speak. So in my case, for instance, I was talking to people with biology and chemistry expertise who don't really necessarily understand anything about machine learning or just know the basics. And I needed to kind of find the middle ground where I kind of speak their language in a way that they would understand it, and they also understand machine learning and side of it and what we're doing and how we're different and all of that. I think being able to kind of speak this kind of common language is really key. And when we grow the company and start hiring people, I think one of the key people that we hired are what we call glue people. Basically, you are the people that can speak multiple languages and can work between teams to really be able to just kind of align and think broadly in a way. So that was one of the main challenges I think that I found in my journey.
Joylin, any kind of mental challenges from your side that I see you smiling, so yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
As frank as possible.
I'll go for that, though I'm aware that my CEO and co-founder is watching this, but we get on well, so it's fine. As I've alluded several times, I'm younger than them. They've done it before very successfully, 4 or 5 companies each, and I'm still one of the youngest employees at PetMedics. what this means in practice is that a lot of the stuff that I've done over the last year or two, I've done for the first time. I've had great people around me, great support from the board, chairman and mentors and all of that, but it has been new. And so there's been a lot of sense of, am I doing this right? Am I doing a good job? What's going on? What happens next? Where am I going with this? That at times, particularly very, very early stage, because really early stage companies are quite free form. You're doing a bit of this, that, and the other. You know, one day you're ordering the laptops and helping clean something, the next trying to sort a big financing round. It's and so just having the sense of self of, wait, no, this is going fine. I've got this. We're grounded. We're going forwards. Has taken time, but I'm glad to say is eventually getting there a bit.
Caroline, what about you? I mean, you know, imposter syndrome, great to get your thoughts about that. What was your first board meeting like?
I mean, I didn't really know what a board meeting was, what the function was. There were more people in the boardroom than there were in my company, and everyone has an opinion about what strategy the company is going to go forward with. So I mean, in terms of when we were talking about risk and coming into the company, I was completely naive to the fact that going into biotech was super risky. I didn't really have an appreciation of how many of detail, and but that's okay. I think that the decision fatigue, or just the, like Jolyon was saying, like, I didn't know what an accountant did, didn't know how to set up payroll, didn't know what insurance we needed. There is just 1,000 decisions in just setting up your basic, like we have a chemistry and a biology lab, and yeah, just I spent a lot of time learning all that for the first time, and I'm sort of enjoying now with a company that's much better funded than it was in the early days, having a load of people who can come in and just sort all that out, because that's what they do really well. And it's not me trying to fudge it for a few employees and try and work out what HR we need and all these kind of things. So that is really draining. It's super emotionally draining in the early days, and actually takes you away from why you did it, because it's about the science. So I always felt there was this big tension between me trying to do my best for the science, which is why I took the job, and then getting distracted by just loads of paperwork and stuff that it didn't interest me quite as much. So yeah, that roller coaster is good. I hope you can't hear the background noise. My kids have just come home from school and found the guitars.
What about investors? So, you know, there's a bit of a code and a bit of a secret handshake on dealing with investors. It would be good to get, and certainly for your seed investors, it would be good to get your thoughts on, you know, how did you, you know, how, you know, any thoughts on dealing with them, and, you know, control, and yeah. Let's go with Antoine. Any thoughts there? Because, you know, you struggled for a long time to get them in.
Yeah, I think part of, you know, long part of the journey was first to build a network that could then introduce me to investors, and then build a relationship with the investors. So it was a kind of a two-stage process, because it's quite rare that you meet the investors you know, out of the blue. There are some conferences you can go to, but generally speaking, it's better to be introduced or have a way in. So I think the main thing for me that helped with investors was to go into a meeting, especially the first meeting or second meeting, with you know, trying to build the trust, and not necessarily coming with an ask, and showing that you're very responsive to feedback. So, you know, say, okay, I have this project, I would like to get your thoughts on it, go through the presentation, get all their comments during and after, and then come back the next time having kind of action those comments. So it could be, you know, oh, I don't like this slide, can you rework it? But it could also be, I think you need to do more research on this and that topic, or even, I think your team is, you know, needs an extra member in this area, and coming back with, you know, having found that team member. So obviously that can take a long time, and it's got a very iterative process. But at the end of the day, I think after, you know, 6 months or 8 months or even a year of kind of having those interactions, you build a good relationship, and that allows you to you know, then lead to an investment. You're on mute, Olivia.
You're muted, Olivia.
Sorry, technical error. So I was going to say, Jolyon, go ahead. You've got some thoughts on investors as well, and you know, have you changed them? How have you worked with them through board meetings? Any snippets
Indeed.
or nuggets, I should say, for
Yeah, so
folks on the line?
one thing to say is that we're very fortunate that you know, the track record of Tom and Alan really helped us, which was important because pet health is an area that is fairly new. We had to do a lot of educating investors, but you know, they could rely on the track record of Tom and Alan. 2 of our 3 investors have invested in Tom's previous company, for example. I think 2 things that are useful generalist learning points are that always takes longer than you think. I mean, Antoine's example is perhaps at the long end, but yeah, that is, it always takes longer to leave as much time as possible. And not all money is the same and will go together. And so there can be 2 examples of that. One is around the time we were raising our first round, it was kind of peak macro geopolitical tensions between US and China. We were speaking to a very international group of investors, and whilst we never directly ran into it with PetMedix, so I don't mind talking about it, it was definitely something that came up in conversations that investors from certain countries wouldn't co-invest with investors from other countries at that time because of things completely unrelated to whatever the company was. The other one can be the strategic plan for the company. So PetMedix is incredibly fortunate. We've got a really well-aligned board that works very well together. But as we raise further rounds in the future, it'll be interesting to see how that goes, because you can have a situation where an existing board or a particular syndicate, you know, view that the company should exit at a certain time, whereas others want to take it further or flip it quicker. And so getting that fit right is almost as important as the amount raised in some cases.
Great, and I've got a couple of questions coming in from a few people, including Charlotte. I don't know your surname, Charlotte, but thank you. Absolutely on fire here. We've got loads. So we'll start with Charlotte's question, one to Caroline specifically. Caroline, how did you manage the shift from being a postdoc on par with your colleagues to taking on a leadership role in the startup with some of those same colleagues? Great question.
Oh, that is a great question. Yeah, that's actually not easy. Because you go from exactly working in a big lab with them and then being their direct boss, and you're acutely aware that you can kind of, you also don't know what you're doing, because I'd never been a manager before, hadn't managed a single human before, let alone had any idea about business. And I think those decisions that you make pre-spin and post-spin are so different. And also, I think that when we were spinning out, I was like, what you need to run a biotech is a load of scientists. So let's get loads of scientists in. But actually, I didn't have an appreciation of all the other positions that we should have hired earlier, maybe. So yeah, that I think that, I mean, we've still got a scientist, one of the scientists who was the first I worked in the lab. She's still with us through our Series A. It's excellent at her job. She'll be with us for the longer term, hopefully. So these things can work out really well, but it's yeah, it was a bit tricky with some of the people that I brought in, I have to say. So it's not always easy. And I think that that's something that you need to be acutely aware of if you're thinking about bringing your fellow postdocs into a company with you when you're going to be their boss, because I don't think they really understand what that will look like. You know, same with you. I didn't really understand what that would look like. So that was tricky. I have no magic solution. I can just say it was one of the challenges I had. Probably the most stressful challenge I had.
And maybe it's good to throw that to other, I mean, stressful challenges. I think HR is a particularly difficult one. And I can see, Noor, you're smiling there. Do you want to share any thoughts on particular operational challenges that you have, and certainly if you've had to work through tricky HR issues?
I think like everything that is not scientific, as people mentioned, probably hinted on earlier, is just a challenge for people like with scientific background jumping into the startup world. Like everything admin, everything HR, everything management is going to be a bit of a challenge. And I think just surrounding yourself with the right advisors, mentor, friends who you can talk about like this issue with, like freely. So people like who not really have a skin in the game, so they're not really part of your company, so that you can talk really freely without worrying about judgments. Who can give you advice, probably people like who have experience with like who where you are now, wearing your shoes and done these things. I think one of the main thing for me as a kind of a founder and boss is, I think hiring is one thing, but also firing is as important. So doing it right and doing it as early as possible is really key. I think one of the main mistakes that I have done in the past is dragging people who I knew that won't really be there for a long time, so dragging them along for longer than I should have done. That was really a painful and stressful experience, I think, for me and for the employee probably. So really, if you kind of feel like it's not going to work, just kind of be nice and just end it. So I think that's one of the main lessons I learned. And I think you can tell very early if someone is going to work out or not.
I want to double down on that, Olivia, if you don't mind, on this hiring thing. I think having also hired people and following the gut feeling about the person on almost the first interaction. Kind of, if you're not really excited to hire that person, I would say that's probably not the right person. Don't hire that person. It's not gonna work out. And that would be my advice, because I would also say that's a big challenge is hiring the right people as well.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's fascinating the way that you need to hire almost different people, or the same person who can evolve through the journey of a biotech. I can see Caroline nodding, but I'm going to ask Jolyon to share some thoughts on how have roles had to change, and how does that make you think about the different people that you bring on early?
So the team has come up in a number of different panel discussions today, and I feel it is something that's very important. We've been very lucky with ours. For example, we actually moved labs in the peak of lockdown. It was a planned move, the pandemic wasn't. And that worked because everyone just pulled in and did it. Everyone from the most junior employee up to the CEO came in, we cleaned the old place, we set up the new one. And there was that attitude of pulling together, which was great. So I think we're good with it. We've got a really good company culture. Then you also have the challenge, particularly as we've grown to nearly 40 people that are excellent scientists, but may not have managed people previously. And something that was mentioned in the previous panel, which I'd like to echo, is the value of training. We've now offered that to certain of our scientists who have got management roles now who didn't previously, and we found that has been very helpful, because we're humans. We've got certain skills we're good at, and others that may take some more time.
Caroline, role personally evolving. Do you want to share anything on that, or even company roles evolving?
That is the hardest thing, isn't it? Because you employ someone for a job description which won't really exist in the same form in even 6 months, let alone a year or 3 years later. And so I think you've got to have a really strong emphasis on employing people who are willing to be really agile in their role and kind of muck in when needed, because they're going to be doing some really boring jobs as well as driving the company forward in ways which you wouldn't get to in a bigger company. So I think if people are really specific about their job description and are very clear, that's good, but they need to also have and understand that the startup journey involves loads of flexibility. Agility in roles I think is super important. I also I remember being really eaten up by HR issues and thinking that it was me because I couldn't manage, or maybe I was doing something fundamentally wrong. And I think that finding other people in the same kind of journey as you is really important, because once you do, you just spend all your time going, oh yeah, that happened to me and that was really hard, and then you realize that it's not you, these things just happen and you just need to be equipped with the right tools to deal with them. So that was super important to me.
I really want to amplify that one as well, not just for the HR side of things, but going to my first big networking meeting, and it was a room full of what is termed male, pale and stale, and I appreciate I only divert on one of those things, who'd all known each other for a long time. And so it was intimidating, but got to meet other young founders, got to form a bit of a connection, and we help bring each other up. I mean, I appreciate that's more of the networking side of things, but having someone to speak to that, as Noor said, doesn't have skin in the game, but you can either vent to or ask constructive advice from, depending on the situation, can help preserve one's sanity, I find.
Mm-hmm. I've got a great question here from Alessandro, but it's also quite long, so I'm going to try and paraphrase it, Alessandro. I think the question here is, Have any of this group had any really dark moments when it's not going right, the data's not panning out, you've lost your passion, you think you chose the wrong thing to do, and you want to go back or hide in a hole somewhere? Go ahead, free for all here on this one, but it would be great to hear from people who've had that. Nor you're laughing, I don't know.
Yeah, I think everyone is laughing because it's really, I mean, it's literally a roller coaster. It's like, it's ups and downs, and it's like, and you will know, like, eventually, I think one of the main things that you learn is that behind every up there is a down, and behind every down there is like another kind of high moment. So that's kind of really what gets you through the journey. And I think one of the main thing that kept me going, at least, is to remember why you are here in the first place. Why you decided to be here versus any other thing that you could potentially do. But I mean, it's really life. There are so many ups and downs. I think as a founder, you're probably have more on your shoulders than many others of like employees. It's more risky, less safe, a lot of more responsibilities. But you chose to be here, and I think there's a lot of moments where you feel like it's totally deserve all the efforts and all the thing that you're doing, and all the sacrifice that you put in place for it, and it does. Just kind of have that level of confidence in yourself, and just remember why you're here in the first place, I think.
Jolyon, any thoughts on that? I know that we spoke before and you mentioned the roller coaster, so it'd be good to.
Yeah, I mean, there are other jobs and even people within our companies that when they leave work at the end of the day, they leave work at the end of the day, and good for them. As a founder, that doesn't typically happen. There's one actually quite a cute thing that I remember, you know, pandemic was just starting, and we, like every other company, probably took stock of where we were going, and there was basically a conversation. So within PetMedics, at the time, the commercial people were me and the CEO, and everyone else was a scientist doing work. And it was effectively, well, we need to bring some money in, otherwise we could potentially face a problem. Glad to say we raised some more capital. It was all fine in the end, but there were a few nights where I was sitting there thinking that, you know, if me and Tom failed to do our job, 20 plus people could lose theirs. And there is that level of, and whether that's, you know, accurate, the amount of burden that one puts on oneself or not, it's how one feels. It can be an emotional thing. So I completely agree with Noor that you have to remember why you're doing it, because there were several times I had the conversation with myself, am I currently happy? No. But would I be happier longer term doing something else? Probably not either. All right then, okay, let's keep going.
I think I might have a slightly darker take on, so there were many times where I just found it completely overwhelming and emotionally exhausting, and it's almost like I had no life outside of just fielding family and then dealing with all the work stuff. And there were many times where I was like, if this was a normal job, I would definitely leave right now, because this is not making me happy at all. But I can't leave, because if I left and the founding CEO of a company which is burning cash, hasn't got to its inflection point, hasn't raised its next Series A, if I leave, like, it's dramatic, but the company wouldn't survive that, because you're not going to get a new CEO in at that point who can run it. And so I often felt like I just had to get through this next phase. And once I was through the next phase, then I could be kind of released from the journey if I needed. But it was a whole lot easier once we were better funded and we had more people in the company. So my desire to leave has gone. But I think they were the dark times, is realizing that I was pretty much trapped in this journey, and something that I had no concept that I'd signed up for. And it's all really nice now because we've got this success story and I can reflect and say it was all worth it. But I have to be honest, I'm not sure I would say that if it had all crashed and burned, because it was really hard at times. So yeah, I don't know. Anyway, sorry.
No, it's interesting. I think it's helpful for people. So Antoine, I've got, I think, a specific question for you here. I'd love to know how you manage the expectations of your early team members through those early years of financial uncertainty. So slightly good riffing off of Caroline's points there.
Yeah, so I think first it was to not overpromise, I was, you know, and be reasonable with the timelines. So I certainly didn't think it would take 3 years, but I knew it would, you know, probably take a year and a half or something like this. I was lucky because my co-founder was in a postdoc, so he was able to kind of continue and being very flexible with it. He had, kind of done the main work and he was refining this approach, etc. So it was very flexible in that sense. But and then it's also about communication. So keeping them updated on the progress that's being made. I was I was lead fundraising and bring him to meetings when needed, but just keeping the communication open and not over promising. At some point, I mean, financially, yeah, it became a little bit hard, and we had to find some solution. We had to borrow money and all that. So that happened. But in the end, things were still progressing, and there was good hope that it would go through. So yeah, we stuck together and it worked out.
And we're going to take a slightly different tack here, because I've got a few people wanting to understand how important networking is to being a founder. And I think there are two elements to this. One is, to raise that initial seed capital. And then secondly, to actually grow the team and bring talent in and then raise subsequent rounds of financing. So just opening it up to thoughts on network and the importance of that, given the different backgrounds that we've got here.
I'd say absolutely essential. We've grown to nearly 40 people, and I think I'm right in saying we've not used a recruiting agency, headhunter, or otherwise since. It's been helpful that we recruited some good early scientists, and Cambridge is a wonderful place to start a company. People know people, and there's a good talent pool there. But then, yes, with the investing, with anything else, really, it's as founders, you have some essential skills, but you can't do everything. And so identifying people or organizations that can help plug those gaps is going to be essential to getting your company off the ground, particularly as early doors, you're probably the only people that have heard of it. And so you've got to go from being something no one has heard of to being something that people recognize enough to want to work with, invest in, or otherwise interact with.
Noor, thoughts on that? Because you might especially be pulling from the same gene pool for your two different startups. So how did you manage that?
I think we're lucky that we had really built a strong name for the company that is known out there. So really, it's already about networking again. It's like whether it's for hiring, whether it's also actually about like building credibility with clients. So building client base and having people interested in working with you. And obviously talent acquisition is a key factor. As Julian mentioned, we basically hired all the people that we have at the moment, and also in my previous company, basically just from our LinkedIn contact and our like people that we have networked with. And that's really by attending those kind of meetings, presenting at events, going and being there, shocked, like just being there really is very important. And the people that you usually meet through those kind of events are better than, like in terms of quality, in terms of like the connections, than the people that you'd hire anywhere else, like in any other way. Investment, of course, is one of the key aspects as well, but also connecting with the right-minded, like similar-minded people. So like other people who are in the same stage as you are, other CEOs, founders, building a network with those kind of friends really can also help you significantly building your startup.
So I've got a colleague in my Caroline Godfrey fan club here who's saying that everything that you've shared, Caroline, resonates hugely about staying sane. And actually this is also Julian's point as well on you need people and networks and friends to mentors to help you through this. Is there any advice from this group on specific mentors or networks or things to join to help you get through some of these really tough times and also build your network?
So the best network I have is Oxford's got a local VC called OSI, and they're very annoying in many ways, but they do have a lot of people in the same position because they have a lot of startups with similar amounts of cash and at similar stages to PepGen. And so they have a an advisor who came in and he used to do workshops with us, and the best thing he said was like, why do you not all meet outside of the workshops that I come in every month or 2 months, just have a coffee with each other every week? And so yeah, every Thursday morning we have a coffee, and it's like mini counseling. It's amazing. That's been the most impactful thing on my mental health throughout the last year, has been just checking base with them, because we all are in exactly the parallel situation. So yes, that's the most impactful. I've got a couple of mentors. I do some coaching more recently, but yeah, friends in the same space are the best thing I have lent on most in the last year.
Antoine, I mean, for you, who did you lean on as you went through this?
So for me, I came in the UK. I didn't even know. I didn't have one friend in the UK. So I came in having no network in the UK. I just went to conferences. You know, just getting in for free, just claiming to be a startup of 2 people, and just getting free passes, and just, you know, going up to people and talking to them. And if you talk to, you know, it becomes a numbers game. If you talk to enough people, some will be very interested in what you're doing, and some will kind of take you under their wing and help you out. So I think, you know, I can, you know, and I can count probably this, you know, 5 or 10 people that have been absolutely key to this company getting off the ground. But, you know, I've probably talked to hundreds of people. So I think it was people who were, you know, who were passionate about entrepreneurship, who were passionate about the field, the market, the need as well, and you know, and were willing to basically give time without any kind of returns, just to help out. And I think what helped to build that network was also to again respond to the feedback and you know, be very responsive. So if they would kind of suggest something, or you know, actually do that and come back and say, well, I've done it, what do you think, what else can I do, etc. And from that, then I got to investors, and from investors, then I got to funding. But it was really based on people volunteering their time, and I'm really grateful for this handful of people.
Mm-hmm. So I've got a question actually for Noor, because, you know, building on this kind of networking theme, Glamorous AI has got, you know, I see it everywhere these days. I don't know if it's just something that flicks in my mind, but I've seen it in many different places. So how have you managed that? You know, how have you used your networks to build you know, a persona for your company? It's great, and I just think it'd be useful for everyone to hear.
Absolutely. I think it's something that I also learned. So it's not really, I'm not really kind of very active on social media, say, or like on networking in the past. As a researcher, we very much kind of tracked in our labs or like behind the screen. So it's something that I really learned during the years. And I think just talking about what you do, posting your updates here and there, part of the role of, I think, the CEO is to be kind of the public face of the company as well. So presenting at events, really just getting the word out there, be as out there as much as you can. And yeah, just be more active on social media was really useful for us as well.
Great. I think though it's different for different companies. I think for AI and deep learning, I think that's quite important. You know, for others, it might not be the same. Joylyn, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, to go slightly back to the previous question, I think the BIA is an excellent way of connecting people. I met Noor on the Pulse program we did together. And then actually it was Hakeem, CEO of Closed Loop Medicine, who my first ever JP Morgan, I think it was one of the receptions, just went around the room and grabbed every young looking founder and just brought us all together and right, you guys now know each other, have fun. And we did, and we did the whole, formed a WhatsApp group. We actually had a nice lunch in London, if you may remember, Noor. And okay, COVID's put a bit of a kibosh on that. Hopefully we'll do these things again. But those are very important. But yes, I agree with Noor that building an online presence is key, because once you've got past the early sort of word of mouth stage, when you're looking for employees, for example, they want to know that when they're joining you, they'll have a reasonable chance of stability. Okay, it's biotech, but if they've heard of you, they can ask people who've worked with you. Raising your profile in this regard is important across the board, I'd say.
Although we were in a slightly different position where we were actively keeping under the radar until our Series A, because we were developing our technology, we weren't publishing, our patents weren't published yet, and it was a very purposeful decision to have the most minimal website and almost no online presence whatsoever, because our competitors are ahead of us in terms of their clinical stuff, but we knew our technology was better. So we were kind of hunkering down and gathering all the data we needed to launch our Series A, which is great because the VCs that we were speaking to, I don't think it mattered to them, but it does create a recruitment issue, because we're on a massive recruitment drive now. And they're like, oh yeah, I hadn't really heard of PepGen until I saw your Series A. And then I'm like, yeah, sorry about that. We are a proper company. It's all good. So yes, there has been a bit of a tension between those two things in the past. But.
Got it. We've got about just under 10 minutes left. So just to the audience, please just ping in some topics on the Q&A or any final questions. And before we do finish, I would like to ask this group about work-life balance through this. I know that, Jolyon, you touched on it, but I think it is quite an important one to understand and hear your experiences. So maybe, Antoine, it would be good, for you, was it slaving day and night? Was there any let up? It would be very interesting to hear.
Yeah. So it was a step down from my old job, which was probably 70 or 80 hours per week. So it was hard to go, but to match that. But for me, also one of the reasons, to go into a startup was also to gain that flexibility and be able to be in charge of my schedule a little bit more. I think it's getting enough sleep is key, no matter what, because if you don't have enough sleep, then you're not productive. You don't have good ideas. You get depressed. It's a lot of things. So that I try to get no matter what. Working out, usually early morning, I find more easier, because then the rest of your day you can just not think about it and just go ahead and work as late as you want. So I find that to be something that works well. And then I think also investing time initially to coach people or to actually take some tasks off of you as well. So to try to distribute the work a little bit more, even if they are scientists, they can do, they can take care of the health and safety documentation, or they can take care of, even, putting their invoice in the system. So, trying to also delegate some of the tasks and not putting everything on yourself is a great help. But yeah, it's long hours and unpredictable hours, and can come, on that night, or it can come sometime on the weekend, and vacations are quite hard. But I think maintaining a kind of a schedule where you sleep enough, you're active enough, a regular activity is key for me.
Nor, what are your thoughts on work-life balance? Has it ever,
I find it to be a tricky subject. I think it's very subjective. I think work-life balance is different things for different people. Some people like to have like a weekend off and like have a holiday or something. I don't think I'm like that. I feel like for me it's like what's important is to be, I think, maybe productive. And I feel like I when I need to stop, I can stop. And I think that's the freedom that you get maybe like from being a founder of your company, because you can like do like 2 weeks or like 3 weeks in a row without having a weekend. But then it's like, if you're like, now I want a holiday, like a weekend, and then you can have it. So I think it's just a matter of finding what really works for you, rather than like just focusing or like on the fact of like everyone is on holiday, so I need to be on holiday, or like everyone is having a weekend, I need to have a weekend. So I think for me, what really works best is like really finding what works for me and just going with that, and making sure that don't really translate that into how your employee actually have to kind of also adjust for kind of your normal working, because by the end of the day, you're the founder and it's your company, and it's probably not the same for them. So everyone has to kind of work on their own rhythm, but there has to be some sort of alignment.
I mean, Caroline, you know, you've got kids, and actually you took a maternity leave through this, which is I think it's a topic for a whole nother session of discussion, but it would be good to get your thoughts on maternity leave in general, you know, through, you know, a biotech.
So actually I took maternity leave whilst I was in the university founding lab. So there I had the whole comfort blanket of the Athena Swan and the like flexible university system. So I was working part-time, and then when PepGen spun out, I had a 3-year-old and a 4-year-old, and the investors would only, you know, they were like, you're either in or you're out, which means you need to do full-time or nothing. So I came in full-time, but I was kind of well aware that I couldn't have these really, really long hour weeks because those hours didn't exist for me. And I think that although my kids had started sleeping through, I then had like the 2 a.m. biotech stress hour of like 2 a.m. to 3 a.m. the to-do list running through your brain. I think that one of the like holidays, like you can go on holiday, but you don't ever like get to switch off in the way that I really miss from before startup. Like I really miss going on holiday and just like sacking off my emails completely and not giving a monkeys about what's going on at work, because I just don't think that's easy in early startup because there's too many things going on. So yeah, I found that a bit sad. But I think as the company becomes more stable, and certainly I'm not the CEO anymore, I am hoping this summer we'll have a bit of a game change and I might get a holiday. So we'll see.
You did tell me before about a neat trick you did to you scheduled a meeting, didn't you, over your pickup times or something? I'm not sure if
I have like a so now I work with US. Well, my in the US, in the US, and so it creates a bit of a problem with like all the meetings in the day are when I'd rather be spending time with the family. So I've just booked out like a good hour and a half slot every evening, which means they get home, I can hang out with them, and then they go to bed, and then I can go back and have a few meetings. It works quite well. My mornings are superbly quiet, so I can like actually read some papers and do some things that I usually have like too much noise around me to do. So yeah, it's been nice. And the pandemic has allowed like eminently workable and flexible working to be the norm, so that's had a huge impact on us. It's been good.
Great. Jolyon, we're just wrapping up, so pearls of wisdom on work-life balance, paternity, maternity leave, anything else that you think this group should hear?
Sure, very briefly on the latter one, there can be a tension as a founder setting things for your company between your aspirations and what is practicable. As a personal individual, I think very long parental leave that is balanced by gender is something to aim for. And that's great if you're a multinational of thousands of employees because you have the slack. As a tiny startup, it's much harder to be able to do something like that. And so finding solutions that you that are workable. So for example, flexible time is a good way to achieve that in a realistic standpoint. From the work-life thing, something that I'm quite big on, which I think does happen in a general case, is focusing on tasks rather than presenteeism. And so that brings in a bit of flex. So for example, we announced a partnering deal in January with Boehringer Ingelheim. So in the run up till Christmas, that was a crazy period, long hours. They're based in the US as well. So that was very busy, but at other times it's been more relaxed. And so I think that's good. And I think similarly, I think another good thing was, so we've been having weekly all hands since day dot, basically. And I think 3 or 4 separate times in the 2 years, Tom, our CEO, has taken a moment at the start to instruct people to work less because it's not sustainable. Yes, there are certain crunch points, and it's been awesome that various people have pulled through when we really needed it. But we also can't have people working 11-hour days and then answering emails at 3 in the morning, and they have a family and stuff, which did happen once or twice. And so you need to keep a long-term mind on it, not just your current crunch deadlines.
Brilliant, thank you, and a big thank you to me from for all of you for being part of this discussion. I think I'm going to hand back to Jane now, who's going to wrap up.
Hi, and thank you so much, Olivia, and thank you to the panel. Inspirational as always, all of you, and thank you so much for your time and your pearls of wisdom and honesty. I'm sure that the audience really appreciated that. Just a couple of bits from me. We're wrapping up the day. It's been fantastic. Thank you to all of you for joining us through the day. We are going to go off to the networking shortly. Hopefully everyone can join us. I think it'd be great. It'd be an opportunity to actually get together on the Remo platform, move around the tables and actually have a good chat with each other. So hopefully after the discussion here about importance of networking, that will be something that you'll all want to get involved with. Feedback, we are going to be obviously looking for feedback on this event being the first one that we've done. You'll get an email tomorrow. Please let us know how you think it went, what we could do better. The platform's also open for a couple of weeks more. So if you missed any of it, you want to go back and look at a panel, all the recordings will be there for you for the next couple of weeks. So do go back. So yeah, just leaves me to say thank you to everybody. Please do, I think Georgina has put the Remo, has put the Remo link in the chat for your convenience. So you can whip straight over. You might want to go and get yourself a drink firsthand, or the link is also in the swap card platform as well. So you can sort of link straight through from there. We've got Mark Cotter from BitBio, who's going to be talking to John Cumbers from SynBioBeta. A really interesting discussion about their technology going forwards and how transformative that's going to be. So please do join us for that. And yeah, look forward to seeing you all there. Goodbye, and thanks everybody for your participation. Thank you.